Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smatter Effect. My name is Mark, and today I would like to talk about The Mandalorian Episode 3, The Sin. This episode is pretty much what I expected from this show from the outset, and I finally got what I wanted. But first, let me talk about how we're going so far. So far, we've heard so many rumors about Rise of Skywalker and what's going on with the direction of Star Wars, and we have no director for the next movies. But that doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is what are you giving to us now? What can we see on the screen now? And as of right now, it's The Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian for me is going upwards. It's really hitting its peak right now, and it's doing really well. The only thing is, I still have to complain about the running time of these episodes. They're running about 30 minutes, 35 minutes each. I expected something a little more cinematic, a little bit more like an hour long, hour and a half long episodes. And they're spending $10 million, $15 million per episode. And I'm just not seeing it on the screen, but I am seeing Star Wars on the screen, which is what I'm really liking about this show. This episode opens with the Mandalorian bringing Baby Yoda back to collect his bounty. And on the way back in their spaceship, they're in the cockpit, and Baby Yoda is in his little space crib. And he gets up out of his space crib and starts playing with a knob on the control panel. And the Mandalorian is like, hey, stop playing with that. That goes back, put it back where it belongs. And so he takes it away. They go into the planet, which I don't know the name of, and he takes the Baby Yoda, takes him back to Werner Herzog. And when he does that, Werner Herzog gives him all that Beskar armor he's been wanting. The Mandalorian asks, hey, what are you going to do with that baby? And Werner Herzog's like, hey, that's against the rules. You're not supposed to be talking about that. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. So he takes his armor, or takes the Beskar armor metal, and it's a lot of it. And he takes it back to where his little Mandalorian hideout is. And when he goes in there, there's a bunch of other Mandalorians in there, all looking pretty cool. And when he goes up to the main person, the person that does all the blacksmithing, she's like, hey, that's cool. That's a lot of metal there. And the Mandalorian says, yeah. She goes, well, I'm going to make you a nice pieces, and the rest should go to everybody else. And he's like, that's no problem. That's cool. And while the Mandalorian and the blacksmith are talking, all the other Mandalorians start gathering around behind them, and they start talking about, how they're few in numbers and they really need that metal, and they need the armor and weapons. And one of them goes out of the way to say, hey, the Empire got their symbol on this Beskar metal. And this clown over here, well, actually, he calls him a coward. He goes, this coward, speaking to the Mandalorian, saying this coward over here is sitting down with them. And for some reason, he tries to take off the Mandalorian's mask, and they start going at it. It's a very quick fight. And the blacksmith's like, whatever. And she goes, hey, we're few in numbers. We're hiding out over here. We need to stay united against everything out there. So you guys need to knock it off. And so he knocks it off. And so the Mandalorian, he's, after she gets done doing her thing. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Every time she's done a little piece of his armor, and every time she pounds on the metal to work it out, he sees flashbacks of his past, and we've seen these flashbacks. They show him as a little baby being put away and being put in like a hiding place while the parents get killed. And we saw little bits and pieces of that in the first episode. And this third episode, we see the door actually open, and we see that there's like a droid there, like a droid ready to shoot him. And that's where it ends. So after this happens, he goes into the same bar that he went into before, where he talks to Carl Weathers' character, Grief. Anyway, he goes in there and meets him. And when he goes in there, he's looking pretty fly. He's got his new armor on. It's shiny and new looking, and everybody's like looking at him with jealousy. It's pretty darn cool. Even Grief Cargo says, hey man, you're looking pretty sharp. Let me get you a new bounty. Or actually, why don't you just retire a little bit, let some other people have a chance. And he's like, no, I want my next bounty now. And so he tries to give him a bounty for a guy that looks like Admiral Akbar and Radis, or General Radis. He looks just like them. So while that's happening, the Mandalorian gets his little puck and takes off and starts getting into his ship. And as he's getting ready in the ship, and he's starting to turn the engine on and everything getting ready to go, he looks over, and the little knob is off the panel where Baby Yoda was playing with it, and he's like, he turns off all of his engines and everything, goes back out there, and he's going to do. He's going to go back over there and try to rescue Baby Yoda, and it's pretty cool. He goes up to the top of a building, and he looks over, and he can see the heat signatures of Werner Herzog's character and the Doctor character, and he's looking through there, and he's actually listening to them, and they're talking about whether they should kill the baby or not. He springs into action, So he actually goes down there and he just starts knocking off all the stormtroopers, which is pretty darn cool. There's some pretty cool kills there. He's got his little gun, which has the long gun, the bigger gun. It has kind of like a stunning effect on the end of it, so he uses that a couple times. He uses his blaster a couple times. He uses his knife, and there's this one cool part where he uses the flamethrower on his wrist to burn a stormtrooper. It's pretty darn awesome. And then he goes into this room where Baby Yoda's kind of like tied down, I guess. That doctor is in there, and he's ready to kill the doctor, but the doctor says, "Hey, don't kill me. I'm the only reason he's still alive. Leave me alone." So he kind of like spares him. But as he's doing that, there's one of those the black ball thing. It's like a torture device. It's from Star Wars, the original New Hope. It's what they use on Darth Vader used on Princess Leia. That thing goes up in the air, and the Mandalorian shoots that, and he takes Baby Yoda. Okay, so this next part is the part we've been waiting for. This is where we can start seeing Star Wars in action. We can start putting together some pieces of what's going on with this world and how it's going to play out. And it does this whole Western type thing where once he gets Baby Yoda and he starts walking down the street, he thinks he's clear and free. But all of a sudden you hear all these beepers going off, all those fobs going off, and it's like, hey, you got to kill the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is the bounty. And so everybody comes out, like almost the whole town is made up of these guys or something, because pretty soon the whole place is just filled up with all these bounty hunters, and they're all surrounding the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian's in the middle of the street, and these guys are everywhere. And there's Carl Weathers' character at the end, Grief Cargo or whatever his name is, and Karga, I think his name is. Anyway, he's there at the end of the street, and he says, "Hey, hand over the baby and we won't kill you." And the Mandalorian's like, "What do you mean? Can I trust you?" And he's like, "Oh, who else are you going to trust? You're surrounded. What are you going to do?" He looks over, and there's this platform. It looks like a floating tractor. And there's a droid on it. It's pretty cool. He acts like he's going to put the baby down on that platform for them to take. He puts the baby down, and then he jumps onto it and lays down and tells the droid to go. And the droid's like, And he's like, "You better go." And so the droid takes off and starts flying away. And as he's doing that, the Mandalorian's just shooting. He's knocking off quite a few people, but there's just too many of them. There's people on roofs. They're all over the place, and it's getting wild. And he's pretty much toast. And then the next thing you know, out of nowhere, all these Mandalorians start flying in, start jumping in. They're flying in like Boba Fett with the little jetpacks in the back, flying in, and they're armed to the teeth. They're shooting, and you got that big Mandalorian that picked the fight with him earlier. He's got this big like Gatling gun, kind of like the guy from Rogue One, the big one. He starts just plowing people down. The Mandalorians overwhelm the rest of the people, and they pretty much take over. And Carl Weathers' character runs away. During this time, the Mandalorian looks over to the other Mandalorian and says, "Hey, we're gonna have to leave this planet now. We're gonna have to leave our hideout now." And the big Mandalorian dude goes, "This is the way." And the Mandalorian says, "This is the way." So whatever. So he runs off, jumps into a spaceship, and when he gets there, Carl Weathers, surprise, surprise, is waiting inside the ship, ready to take the baby. He aims the gun at the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian happens to get away, and when he shoots Carl Weathers falls out of the spaceship. The Mandalorian gets in the spaceship and takes off, and we look over, and Carl Weathers got shot. So when he got paid, he got the Beskar armor, and it saved his life. So he's still alive. So we have the Mandalorian taking off, and there's one little part that was a little cheesy for me, but whatever. It's a part where they're just taking off, and another Mandalorian comes by with a jetpack flying by and gives him the old like salute, looking like the Rocketeer. And the Mandalorian just says, "Hey, I gotta get me one of those." And that was a pretty darn cool episode because, Star Wars was corny. Star Wars had some funny, goofy stuff in it. But it had good action, solid story, characters, and that's what this show has. This show has all that little stuff that we want, all that little stuff that we need, and it's Star Wars. I mean, I can honestly say that this really feels like Star Wars to me, and I've got nothing but good things to say about it, except for the music. The music is just, oh wow, the music just has to go. I mean, you could probably replace this music with anything, and it would be so much better. But as far as I'm telling you, this episode was really good. And I suggest if you haven't watched it yet, just go ahead and watch it. It's worth it. Really, go watch it. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a good day.